It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
Beat the Atlanta Braves, and beat them they did. A little lucky, but luck is okay. The New York Mets with a dramatic extra inning walk-off victory against the Atlanta Braves. It was so fulfilling. It was so awesome. We decided to give you an instant reaction. Rico Brogna as the New York Mets defeat the Atlanta Braves 3-2. And get this. The New York Mets are a half game behind the struggling, bumbling, choking, collapsing Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves have been a bad team now for a couple of months, and the New York Mets did not play their best game. Certainly, they were shut down all night long by Chris Sale outside of the Francisco Lindor jump on the first pitch moment in the third inning. But the Mets were able to make the plays they needed to and escape with a Game 1 victory against the Atlanta Braves. When I say that the Mets were lucky tonight, I don't mean that to demean the victory. I really don't. But there was some luck involved. Obviously, the game winner was a fly ball to right field in which Ramon Laureano, I'm old enough to remember when Ramon Laureano was a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. And instead, he's overrunning, I don't want to say what is a routine fly ball to right field, but a ball he should have caught. Not my freaking problem. We're not doing a podcast called The Sid Bream, so it ain't my problem. But that involved a little bit of luck. I'm not sure if it was a missed sign or if it was just terrible managing or if Jared Kelenic is an idiot. But we got a suicide squeeze attempt in the 10th inning that the Mets didn't F up. So as lucky as they were that there was a failed suicide squeeze, we are Met fans. And the one thing we've seen many times over the years are major F-ups. That could have been one. Francisco Alvarez could have thrown it in the left field. Mark Vientos could have thrown it way past Alvarez. But fortunately for them, they were able to work the 2-5-2 rundown. And so the Mets took advantage of a brave mistake. You go back an inning earlier, and this really turned out to be one of the most pivotal plays from this game. Whit Merrifield, it wasn't Whit Merrifield, right? No, it was Whit Merrifield because he came in as a pinch runner, was attempting to steal his second base in a row and try to steal third after Nacho Alvarez struck out, and Francisco Alvarez made a perfect throw to third base. For whatever reason, and you see this sometimes, Mark Vientos was not aggressive in applying the tag and almost waited for Merrifield to come to him. And you look at that replay, and I think it's just one of those things where it was so close they weren't going to overturn it. But if they had ruled that safe on the field, they were going to uphold that too. He probably was safe. I think Merrifield just got in slightly before Vientos applied that tag at third base. So a little bit of luck. A little bit of luck that the umpires didn't overturn it back in New York City. And that was a monstrous play because now all they needed to do, all Edwin Diaz needed to do, was get Ramon Laureano out, not have to worry about a runner on third and less than 2 outs, and he makes the monstrous pitch. So there was some luck over the final 3 innings of this game, but there was also some awesome play. Hero of the game, number 1, Jose Budo. I like Big Budo, and I cannot lie. And I have no idea why that's not on a t-shirt yet. Like, what are you people waiting for? I like Big Budo, and I cannot lie. And what we saw today, tonight, yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this new edition of Rico Brogna, is we saw the value of Jose Budo out of the bullpen. Because a lot of times when you go to a relief pitcher in a big-time spot like Mendy did in the 6th inning with 2 on and nobody out, and a reliever shows great poise by getting out of that inning, maybe they go one more inning, or maybe they're done. You know, most relievers are not pitching 3 innings and throwing over 40 pitches. But Jose Budo is that kind of weapon. And so we talked the other day on the last Rico about him possibly re-entering the rotation. More on that a little bit later on. But when he's in the bullpen, you can do what Mendy pulled tonight, which is he gets you through the 6th inning, then you push him through the 7th inning, and then you give him a chance in the 8th inning. And I got to be honest, I thought about pitching him in the 9th. I thought for a second, you know what? He's not going to be available the next 2 days anyway. He's already stretched out for the most part as a starting pitcher. I've got the bottom half of the order coming up in the ninth inning. In fact, this was a first guess. Not something I'm mad about. Not something that Mendy screwed up about. Just a thought. Budo's pitching great. He's retired 9 in a row. Why can't he pitch another inning? But I think what Mendy did was he got so locked in on, hey, I got to the ninth inning. I have a fresh Edwin Diaz. Let me just use my best reliever. But we've talked about this before. If you have full confidence in Edwin Diaz, if you believe he's back, and I thought he was pretty damn good in the ninth inning after issuing the leadoff walk. Again, there was some luck involved with the caught stealing. But nevertheless, if you really believe in Edwin Diaz, then saving him for a potential 10th inning where there's a runner on second and less than 2 outs, runner on second, nobody out, and you probably need that strikeout pitch more than ever, kind of makes sense. So it was a thought because Jose Budo gives you that ability. When you have a guy who's essentially a starting pitcher, pitching out of the bullpen, pitching as well as he's pitching, you can stretch him for 3 or 4 innings. But how good was Jose Budo? Right now, he is firmly in the circle of trust. I think the circle of trust involves him. It involves Edwin Diaz. It involves Dednell Nunez. And I think Phil Maton is making a bid. Phil Maton is trying to enter that circle of trust. He's doing his best. He's fighting through that door. Because give Phil Maton credit. Phil Maton came in, runner on second, nobody out in the 10th inning. And while he was given a little bit of a break on the failed suicide squeeze, Phil Maton was able to calmly field that bunt in which the Braves were bunting in the 10th inning. I thought that was stupid, but whatever. And then very calmly plays the comebacker against Jared Kelenic and is able to get through the 10th inning.
I'm just happy that Phil Maton actually picked the ball up on that bunt because it looked like between him and Alonso, no one wanted to touch it.
That's the beauty of it. Like, despite the hesitation, there was no panic. So there was that slight delay on who was going to pick it up. I feared as that delay occurred, now he's going to throw it in the right field. Now he's going to make a mistake. And Phil Maton was able to casually make that play. And look, the Met bullpen, 5 innings, no hits, 6 strikeouts, 1 walk.
Evan, and this is why we had this conversation yesterday. How do you take Jose Budo out of the bullpen? I mean, he is a monster. He's a beast. You're going to have to get elite level bullpen arms, like 2 of them that are going to be able to fill in those innings for Budo.
You're kind of right in that on the days where Budo pitches. And look, one of the negatives of using a guy 3 innings is that we may not see him the rest of this series. I think that is possible. We're definitely not going to see him Friday. We're probably not going to see him Saturday. And I think Sunday's a coin toss, right? So when you use a guy for multiple, which is part of why I figured squeeze another inning out of him. Like, screw it. He's not going to be available for a few days anyway. You may as well take advantage of it. But you are right that on nights like tonight, where you get 3 out of Budo, if he's not in the bullpen, now you probably have to use 2 or 3 relievers to fix those innings. But I want to answer your question. And I'm going to answer your question with watch Saturday's game. Because when you say, or when anyone says, how can you take Jose Budo out of the rotation? Maybe we should watch Tyler McGill pitch on Saturday afternoon. And after we watch him pitch, probably give up 4 or 5 runs in, let's say, 3 2/3 innings, walk a bunch of guys, throw a million pitches. Then you may say, Jesus, this guy's got to start once a week. Give me Budo. Give me Budo or give me death. That's how you may come to the conclusion.
All right, well, okay, but here's a real question. And I know that we're saying, just easy, get bullpen arms. That's what the Mets have been missing. But is it easier to find good bullpen arms or decent starting pitching? What is easier to get?
I think there's actually going to be, if you look at what's probably out there on the trade market, I think there's going to be more relievers available than starting pitchers. It seems like the only starting pitchers available right now are top of the market guys like Tariq Skubal and Garrett Crochet, who I don't think the Mets are going to be very involved in. So I think there's actually going to be more relievers that are available. But here's what I'll say about the Budo debate. I think we can all take a deep breath. Let's see Tyler McGill on Saturday. Let's see Kodai Senga on Friday. Let's see how they do this turnaround. If I do my math correctly, because they have an off day at the end of the Minnesota series, They can also pause, keep Senga pitching with that extra day of rest, and maybe give the sixth starter a little bit of a break and not have to use it consistently. And let's also see what they do at the trade deadline. Again, the only way you're moving Budo back to the rotation, there are factors that haven't occurred yet. What are they doing at the trade deadline? Look, the next time they're going to need a sixth starter after McGill pitches on Saturday will be after the trade deadline. And then we'll know. It won't be a hypothetical. Well, they have to add 3 relievers. Let's see what they add. But there's no doubt that having Budo and having a reliever that is capable of getting 9 outs the way he did on Thursday night is so incredibly valuable. Now, let's go through this game a little bit, because I thought that Luis Severino was a very typical Luis Severino self. He was not dominant. He was able to make the big pitches for the most part when he needed to in the first inning with 2 on and 1 out, when he strikes out Matt Olson and he strikes out Travis d'Arnaud. My one critique would be in the second inning. Even though the base hits he gave up were soft contact, he gave up a C&I single to Ramon Laureano, and he gave up the little blooper to Orlando Arcia. Obviously frustrating to give up back-to-back hits to the 8th and 9th hitter, both guys who are not producing offensively. What frustrated me was not paying attention to Laureano on the stolen base, because you can give up back-to-back cheap hits to Laureano and Arcia, and it shouldn't cost you a run. Not with 2 outs and nobody on. You should have a third opportunity to get through that inning, which he eventually did by striking out Jared Kelenic. What ruined the inning was the stolen base. And that stolen base by Laureano, I think it was on the very first pitch of the Arcia at-bat, was completely on Severino. He never looked at him. He never paid attention. So my critique of that inning is not giving up, God bless you, is not giving up cheap base hits and very much soft contact base hits. It's that you need to do a more careful job of at least keeping an eye on the base runners. Francisco Alvarez, despite what the caught stealing percentages may say, has a very good arm behind the plate. But you need to give him an opportunity. What we saw later in this game with Whit Merrifield was an opportunity. We didn't see that in the second inning. And the way Chris Sale was dominating early in this game, there was a fear that that 1 run was going to be the difference. And if not for one mistake, and it was Francisco Lindor ambushing Chris Sale on the first pitch of the 3rd inning, that may have been the difference in the game. But outside of that, Sevy pitched a hell of a game. Again, made the big pitch when he needed to. Got a big double play against that creep Marcelo Zuna in the 3rd inning. Had a clean 1-2-3 4th, a clean 1-2-3 5th. One other thing about Alvarez I want to compliment him on, as he's not hitting. But the beautiful thing about Francisco is that even when he's not hitting, he's still impacting a game with his defense. How about that play? It was at the end of the 5th inning where Austin Riley tries to check his swing on a 1-2 slider in the dirt. They have to check over at first base, but the ball gets past Alvarez. And Francisco, with such a heads-up play of not even waiting to find out what Gabe Morales is going to say, let me go run after this baseball. And if I get the call that he swung and missed, I'll make the throw to first base, which he did. He made that little slide to get up, made a good throw to Pete at first base. But if you hesitate for a second, all of a sudden Marcelo Zuna's coming up in the 5th inning with a runner on 1st and 2 outs. And that's a dangerous spot. So very little things, but important things by Francisco Alvarez. So you get the 5 out of Sevy, a pitch count at 80. Totally with Mendy to let him start the 6th inning. This is where you run into some trouble, because the pitch count's getting up there, but it's not the end-all be-all. Your 3rd time around the batting order, when he walks Marcelo Zuna, antenna goes up. That's my first little antenna of, should I take him out? Now I got the pitch count at about 86. I got Matt Olson coming up. Does have a hit in this game, but it was a cheap base hit. You know what? Screw it. Let me keep Sevy in this game. Gives up a base hit to Matt Olson. 2 on, nobody out, Travis d'Arnaud coming up. That's where I make the move. 1 batter earlier than when Carlos Mendoza made the move. He let Sevy face d'Arnaud. And by the way, I think this is a 50-50 managerial criticism. I'm just telling you how I felt watching this game. A little bit behind on DVR, but not that freaking matters. And he gives up the base hit to Travis d'Arnaud, and then it's a no-brainer. Okay, let me get Sevy out of this game. And what's funny about Budo coming in Jose Budo coming into a 2-on, nobody-out situation, not only because this game is now tied, but this is going to determine what we say about Luis Severino's performance. Think about it. If Jose Budo comes in and immediately gives up a 3-run home run, Luis Severino's final pitching line is 5 innings, 7 hits, 4 runs. And what are we saying about it? We're saying, crappy performance by Sevy. But because I like Big Budo, and I cannot lie, came into this game and was able to come up big with the back-to-back strikeouts and Laureano's fly out, and both runners are stranded, 5 innings, 2 runs, not bad. Not quite a quality start, but for 2024, it's a quality start. So Jose Budo not only saves the game for the New York Mets, not only saves the game for us, but saves the game for Luis Severino. But what was so impressive about what Budo did in that 6th inning is he fell behind the first 3 hitters, and it didn't matter. He fights back against Eddie Rosario, strikes him out, fights back against Nacho Alvarez and strikes him out. As I say the names, I'm reminded, it's not like he was going through murderer's row. This ain't your father's Braves. This ain't last year's Braves. But again, not my problem. We ain't doing a podcast called the Rafael Belliard, so it ain't our problem. But Jose Budo gets the back-to-back strikeouts. Laureano kind of gave that one a little bit of a spank to deep center field, but was able to make the play. And then Budo goes to work with a clean 7th and clean 8th. The offense got completely shut down, and we were complimenting the Mets the other day, rightfully so, about how well they've done against elite starting pitchers, how well they've done against Garrett Cole, how well they did against Dylan Cease, who, by the way, threw a no-hitter on Thursday. I do think that this is one of those performances, and it's frustrating to say this, but let's be real, where you got to tip your hat and say, Chris Sale was just ridiculous. Chris Sale was just nasty. And it's amazing to think about what Chris Sale has turned back into. We had a Rico during the offseason, and I forget who emailed it. I'm sure that person who emailed could email us again and take credit, who had an idea. It was the one person who I saw suggest this idea during the offseason, the Rico mailbag, which was take on Chris Sale's contract. Bring him in. Why not? Mets sort of did that in a lot of ways by signing Scherzer and Verlander to short-term deals. And I remember not hating it, but not loving it, almost like, what's the point? You know, if you're evaluating for the future, what's the point? You know, Chris Sale comes in. He's an older guy. He probably doesn't have much left. Hasn't pitched the last few years. Sure, if Steve Cohen doesn't mind, it's his checkbook. You're not going to have to give up very much. All Atlanta gave up was Vaughn Grissom. But the Mets obviously didn't do it. Atlanta did. And he's a legitimate Cy Young contender. I think he's one of the more remarkable kind of career turnarounds or fixes that we've seen in a while. Because I don't think there's anybody in their right mind who thought Chris Sale would have another dominant season left in him. And as far as this game was concerned, I mean, he honestly gave up one hit. Because the home run to Lindor, which, hey, great job by Francisco. He continues to be on a rampage, 22 home runs, 62 RBIs. Incredible. I mean, look, I'm not going to waste your time with superlatives on Lindor. You all watch the Mets. We all know how great he's been. So I don't need to add anything. But outside of that home run by Lindor, the only other hit Chris Sale gave up was a check swing infield hit to Jeff McNeil when he promptly got thrown out trying to go to second base. That was it. He hit Alonso with a 1-2 pitch. He walked Tyrone Taylor in a pretty good at-bat, and that is it. And Chris Sale was able to pitch into the 8th inning, probably could have kept going, but I think Brian Snitker and the Braves are being careful with him because of the fact he just hasn't thrown a lot of innings over the last couple of years. So I hate doing this, but I think we can do it after a win. I tip my hat. I give a nice golf clap to Chris Sale and his dominant performance. And the Mets couldn't even hit Joe Jimenez when he came in. They couldn't hit Raisel Iglesias. Lindor gave you that great at-bat in the 9th, which should not be forgotten. An 11-pitch at-bat. You know why that matters? Maybe this is too geeky, but I'll be honest with you. I think it matters because even though Iglesias pitched a 1-2-3 inning, that 11-pitch at-bat forced Iglesias to have, I think it was a 20-pitch inning. And maybe that affects him if Snitker uses him on Friday night. Maybe that long at bat somewhere down the road in this series benefits the Mets, even if it didn't go anywhere. And then obviously you have the ninth inning. J.D. Martinez was miserable in this game, struck out. They walked Pete Alonso. I was mildly surprised about it. Vientos also had a brutal night. He struck out. And then we got lucky with the Jeff McNeil fly ball to right field that Ramon Laureano overruns. And listen, man, I'd rather be lucky than good. As a New York Met fan, we'd rather be lucky than good. And the Mets had a little bit of luck and a lot of good. Couple of things. I think I could throw some negatives in there. Please shoot DJ Stewart to Mars. Can we do that? Can we just put him on a slingshot and just sling him out to Mars? Or, because I'm a nicer guy, sling him to Syracuse. There is no reason DJ Stewart should be on this team any longer. He is not good. He is not good defensively. He is not fast. He's only hit 5 home runs this season, so don't give me his power. And granted, he was forced into this lineup tonight because Carlos Mendoza was so committed to giving Brandon Nimmo an off day. In fact, how committed was Carlos Mendoza to give Brandon Nimmo an off day? He put DJ Stewart in a lineup against Chris Sale. DJ Stewart, who never faces lefties, and on the occasional moment where he does, he was 0 for 10 this year. So not only was Mendy so desperate to give the slumping Brandon Nimmo an off day, which I actually understand, especially against someone as tough as Chris Sale. He's already struggling. Give him a respite. So I get that. Here's what I don't get. And again, shows the commitment that Carlos Mendoza had to Brandon Nimmo not playing in this game. In the bottom of the 9th inning, in a tie game, DJ Stewart was leading off against Raisel Iglesias. How is Brandon Nimmo not being used right there? I was so confounded by that. And then my thought was, I didn't have a lot of time to think because DJ Stewart struck out, I think, on 3 pitches. It was very quick. Was, wow, okay, he's really committed to not playing Brandon Nimmo. Because think about this. If you're not going to use Brandon Nimmo to lead off the bottom of the 9th inning of a tie game with DJ Stewart at the plate, then you're literally never using him in this game. Because there's no other moment where you're going to use him. If you're not pinch hitting for DJ in a situation in which you just want base runners, and we know how good Brandon is at getting on base, then it's never happening. I mean, then you have just committed to, these are my 9 players today, and I'm done. So it was surprising, a little frustrating, but I think what David Stearns needs to do, and maybe he's going to wait the 5 days or the 4 days until the trade deadline, because it is possible the Mets add a bat. I have suggested Jesse Winker quite often. I think Jesse Winker would be a great addition. And if they could get Dylan Floro in that trade, I'd be pretty ecstatic. You get yourself a reliever, you get yourself a bat, and you send DJ Stewart back somewhere else. So maybe they're going to wait the 4 days, but DJ Stewart can't be on this team anymore. Like, what do we do? Well, I mean, what are we kidding here? Like, stop insulting our intelligence. Get him off the team. Now, there was a trade, and there was a trade that involved a guy that I think would have been a great fit for the New York Mets. It did not happen. A.J. Puck, the left-handed reliever for the Miami Marlins, got traded to one of the Mets' rivals, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I saw 2 prospects were sent. I cannot tell you how great those prospects are. I'll do a little bit more research on that to try to come up with a Met equivalent. But A.J. Puck, and don't be fooled by his numbers, A.J. Puck, remember, started the year in the rotation for the Marlins. They had this weird idea of taking him and making him a starter. It failed. He was miserable. And they moved him back to the bullpen. And since he's moved back to the bullpen, he has pitched really well. Mets just saw him in that 4-game series in Miami. He would have been a very good addition. Is it frustrating to see a guy who would have been a good addition traded to a team the Mets are competing with? Mildly, a little bit. Not going to panic. We have 4 days. And we're also going to learn a lot about David Stearns. I think this is a very intriguing trade deadline because he's in a delicate spot. I don't think he should do anything stupid. I don't think he should mortgage the future. But you would be doing a major disservice to not only us as fans, but to everybody in that room who has stormed the Mets back to 54-48, a season high, 6 games above 500 in a wild card spot, a half game behind the top wild card spot. You would be doing everybody a disservice if you don't try to improve the weakest part of this team. Eventually, we learn about our general managers and team presidents, and they have reputations. We're going to learn a lot about David Stearns. And that leads back to something that we talked about earlier, but let's get into more detail on, and that is the 6th starter spot. Kodai Senga will be activated for tomorrow night's game, Friday night's game against Atlanta. I have no idea what to expect from him. I don't think any of us do. But what we know is that they're going to be short a reliever because somebody's going to be optioned to the minor leagues to make room for him. My guess is Danny Young. That'd be my guess. One of the Youngs is going down. And Jose Budo is also not available. So I would guess that Adrian Hauser, if Kodai Senga chased early, maybe has to get multiple innings, many outs. And then on Saturday, we are being reunited with Tylor Megill. I am not looking forward to this. Tylor Megill was given an opportunity. He earned that opportunity with what he did in spring training. I'll give him that. And he wasn't good enough. And then he goes back down to AAA, and it was the same crap. He wasn't good enough. So I do not have a lot of faith in Tylor Megill. The Mets seem very committed to going with a 6-man rotation. Look, you can creatively, it's not easy, but you can creatively work around giving Senga an extra day while not fully committing to a 6-man rotation. Like I mentioned, the Mets have some off days that they can play with, including the one coming up next week, next Thursday, after this series against Minnesota. I look at the rest of the schedule, it gets challenging because then they've got that West Coast trip where they go to Anaheim, St. Louis, Colorado, and Seattle, but then there's an off day. I just don't know if Tylor Megill should be the committed guy that they're going to. Christian Scott's not coming back anytime soon. He's not throwing for 2 weeks. So I would almost get him out of our mind. And that's what circles back to Budo being an option. Budo being an option will come down to 2 things. Number one, Tylor Megill. Tylor Megill's given an opportunity. Big game against the Braves. Go pitch well. Go shut me up. Go shut everyone else up. And then 2, what do they add at the deadline? Now, one reason why Budo is actually valuable out of the bullpen alongside his circle of trustness and how well he's pitched is that the Mets with a 6-man rotation will be 1 short in the bullpen. God bless you. They will only have 7 relievers. And so having guys who can pitch multiple innings becomes very, very important. Now, you could have Tylor Megill be that guy. The problem is none of us trust him. So Tylor Megill could be a multi-inning guy all we want. He's in that bullpen. No one's trusting him in a big spot, especially with what Jose Budo was able to do against the Braves on a Thursday night. So let's see what David Stearns adds. Let's see what David Stearns adds. Let's see what David Stearns adds. And then I think then we will have a better idea on how they should progress with the 6th spot in the rotation and what to do with I love Big Budo and I cannot lie. You're on mute, Pete, so fix that if you want to speak.
Oh, thank you very much. There we go. So there's one thing, though, that there is an issue here with the deadline, all right? And it's a chemistry thing, okay? We all heard about Jazz Chisholm possibly being traded, but would he be fitting, certain clubhouse? Would he fit the Yankee way, as some people say, if he was thinking about going to the Bronx, whatever? There's a guy, DJ Stewart, you said it, what is he doing here? Well, you know what? He had the biggest hit of the night. He hit Jeff McNeil without water, okay? That's what he does. He's a chemistry guy. I don't want him. It's your fault. You're the one who was like, who'd make a good roster spot next year? DJ Stewart. He's a good story. He's terrible. But it's your fault.
No, I stand by that. And then once you suck, you're gone. Yes, he had earned that opportunity to be the 4th outfielder or the 5th outfielder, however you want to define it. And then eventually, when you're hitting, 175 in late July, you say, okay, you earned it. Now you're gone. I don't want to hear this chemistry crap anymore. I mean, last year when the Mets were bad, they had the worst locker room in the world. The core was rotten. Everybody's got to go. Unless you're believing that OMG has just changed everything and JD Martinez changed everything, winning creates good chemistry. And I think the stories about Jazz Chisholm are dirty. If someone has something to say about Jazz Chisholm, say it. Because it matters what you're trying to say about him. Like, what are you trying to say about him? Are you trying to say he's a bad guy? Then say it. Do you have specific stories about what Jazz has done? Then say it. I'm not a reporter, but I got a big freaking issue when I hear these anonymous, I'm concerned he's not a good locker room guy. Because it reeks of ignorance. It reeks of what? Because he wears too many chains around his neck? Like, it bothers me. Say something specific or shut the hell up. I am not concerned about team chemistry. Winning creates chemistry. And if the Mets continue to win, and they've been winning, and they've been doing it a lot, then DJ Stewart dumping water on Jeff McNeil's head is not going to be a problem. Either way, great victory. Here we are, a half game behind the Atlanta Braves. Thank you very much for listening, downloading, subscribing, and watching another victorious edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.